The alarm clock screamed at 6:30 a.m., just like it had every morning for the past 3 Earth months. Commander Zara Thorne rolled over in the narrow dormitory bed, her scarred hands reaching out to silence the infernal device. The thin mattress creaked under her weight as she sat up, running fingers through hair that had once been perfectly maintained according to military regulations. Now it hung loose around her shoulders, no longer the symbol of authority it once was. Through the small window of her dorm room, she could see other students hurrying across the campus quad, young humans with backpacks and coffee cups, laughing and chatting about weekend plans and upcoming exams. They had no idea that the woman in room 247 had once commanded the largest human fleet in galactic history. Zara stood and stretched, feeling the familiar ache in her left shoulder where Krillian plasma had nearly taken her arm off during the Battle of Proxima. The scar ran from her collarbone to her elbow, a permanent reminder of the war that had ended 2 years ago. The war that humanity had won, thanks to her strategies and the brave souls who followed her into the darkness between stars. She pulled on jeans and a simple sweater, clothing that still felt foreign after decades in military uniforms. The mirror reflected a face that looked older than its 42 years. Gray streaked through her dark hair, and lines mapped the stress of decisions that had saved or doomed entire worlds. The shower down the hall was occupied as usual. Zara waited patiently, listening to someone singing an old Earth song off-key. When her turn came, she stood under the lukewarm water and remembered the sonic showers aboard her flagship, the Defiance. Everything had been efficient there, purpose-built for war. Back in her room, she gathered her textbooks and notebooks. Introduction to Galactic Politics, Xenobiology Fundamentals, Basic Diplomatic Protocol. Subjects she had once known intimately from the other side of the table, when alien ambassadors had sought audiences with the famous human commander who had broken the hegemony's advance. The dining hall buzzed with morning conversation. Zara took her usual spot at a corner table, away from the clusters of friends and study groups. She ate methodically, fuel for the day ahead. While around her, students complained about professors and planned their social lives. A group of young women at the next table were discussing their xenobiology professor. "Professor Martinez is so boring," one said. "I mean, who cares about Krillian reproductive cycles? It's not like we'll ever meet any of them." Zara's fork paused halfway to her mouth. She remembered the Krillian breeding worlds, how their desperation to protect their young had driven them to ally with the hegemony. She had been the one to offer them sanctuary in human space, turning enemies into allies with a single diplomatic gesture that had shifted the entire war. "Actually," another student replied, "I heard there are some Krillians working at the university now. Part of the integration program." Zara finished her breakfast in silence and headed to her first class. Advanced Mathematics for Engineers filled a lecture hall with 200 students. She took a seat in the back, pulled out her notebook, and tried to focus on differential equations instead of the memories that constantly threatened to surface. Professor Chen droned on about computational methods while Zara found herself calculating hyperspace jump coordinates in the margins of her notes. Old habits died hard. She had once plotted courses for 1,000 ships, threading them through dangerous space to strike at the heart of enemy territory. "Miss Thorne?" Professor Chen's voice cut through her reverie. "Perhaps you could solve this equation for us?" Zara looked up to find the entire class turned toward her. On the board was a complex formula involving orbital mechanics. She stood slowly, walked to the front of the room, and picked up a marker. The solution flowed from her hand automatically, muscle memory from years of calculating bombardment trajectories and fleet movements. The class sat in stunned silence as she worked through the problem in half the time it should have taken. When she finished, Professor Chen stared at the board with obvious surprise. "That's correct. Very impressive. Have you studied orbital mechanics before?" "A little," Zara replied quietly, returning to her seat. She didn't mention that she had personally overseen the orbital bombardment of 12 hegemony fortress worlds. After class, a few students approached her with questions about the math, but she deflected them politely and hurried to her next lecture. Introduction to Galactic Politics was held in a smaller classroom, with only 30 students arranged in a rough circle. Professor Williams was a young man, probably younger than some of the campaigns Zara had fought. He had that eager enthusiasm of someone who had studied history, but never lived it. "Today we're going to discuss the end of the Hegemony War," he announced, pulling up a holographic display of the galaxy. This conflict reshaped the political landscape of known space and established humanity as a major galactic power. Zara sank lower in her chair as the professor launched into his lecture. Red markers showed hegemony territory at its peak, a vast swath of space that had threatened to engulf all free worlds. Blue indicated human space, small and vulnerable at the war's beginning. The turning point came during the Battle of Proxima. Professor Williams continued, clearly excited by his subject. Commander Zara Thorne's brilliant tactical innovation broke the hegemony siege and opened the way for the liberation of the outer colonies. A student raised her hand. What happened to Commander Thorne after the war? I heard she just disappeared, Professor Williams shrugged. Military records are classified, but rumor has it she retired to a quiet life somewhere in human space. Some say she was traumatized by the war's end. Others believe she was forced out by politicians who feared her popularity. Zara stared at her hands, remembering the day she had resigned her commission. The politicians had wanted to use her as a symbol, parade her around at rallies and ceremonies. They had wanted to turn her into something she wasn't, a perfect hero with no doubts or regrets. But she had doubts. She had regrets. Every life lost under her command weighed on her conscience, even though she knew her decisions had saved millions more. The weight of those choices had driven her to seek something different, something simpler. The class continued analyzing her strategies and decisions with academic detachment. They debated her choices as if they were moves in a game, not life-and-death decisions made under impossible pressure. Zara took careful notes, seeing her own actions through the lens of history for the first time. When the lecture ended, she gathered her books and headed for the door. Professor Williams called out to her. "Miss Thorne, could I speak with you for a moment?" Her heart hammered as she approached his desk. Had he recognized her somehow? But his expression was merely curious, not shocked. "I noticed you seemed very engaged during the lecture," he said. "Have you studied military history before? Your questions yesterday about logistics were quite sophisticated." "I've always been interested in strategy," she replied carefully. "Well, if you're thinking about graduate work, I'd be happy to discuss research opportunities. The war's end is still poorly understood. So many classified records, so many unanswered questions about the key figures involved." Zara nodded politely and excused herself, her mind racing. She had come to this university to disappear, to become anonymous among thousands of students. But her past kept bleeding through, no matter how hard she tried to bury it. Walking across campus toward her next class, she passed a memorial garden dedicated to those lost in the war. Black stone walls bore thousands of names, soldiers and civilians alike. She knew many of them personally, had given the orders that led to their deaths. At the center of the garden stood a statue of a woman in military uniform, face turned toward the stars. The plaque read, "In honor of those who fought in the darkness so others could live in the light." The statue looked nothing like her, thankfully. The sculptor had imagined someone taller, more heroic, without scars or doubt. But Zara recognized the uniform, the rank insignia she had once worn with pride. A young couple stood before the statue, holding hands and reading the inscription aloud. They looked so young, probably born after the war began. They would never know the fear of hegemony raids or the uncertainty of those dark years when human survival hung by a thread. Zara turned away and continued toward her afternoon lecture. Just another student among thousands, carrying secrets that would shake the galaxy if they were ever revealed. The xenobiology lab hummed with the sound of environmental controls maintaining perfect atmospheric conditions for the specimens within. Zara stood before a tank containing a juvenile Krillian seaworm, its translucent body pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The creature was beautiful in its alien way, nothing like the monstrous invasion force the propaganda had portrayed during the war. "Fascinating, isn't it?" a voice said beside her. Zara turned to see a tall figure approaching, moving with the distinctive gliding gait of a Krillian. The being stood nearly 7 feet tall, with the characteristic chitinous plates covering its torso and the 4 arms that marked its species. Its head was elongated, with large dark eyes that seemed to hold depths of intelligence and sadness. "Dr. Vektar," Zara read from the nameplate pinned to its lab coat. "You're the new professor?" "Teaching assistant, actually," the Krillian replied, its voice carrying the musical tones of its native language. I am Sektar Vecnor, but please call me Sek. And you are? Zara, just Zara. She studied the alien's face, searching for any sign of recognition. During the war, she had met with Krillian ambassadors many times, but always in formal settings where individual features blurred together. A pleasure to meet you. Zara, I take it this is your first xenobiology course? Yes, I'm still getting used to seeing other species as people instead of enemies. Sek's head tilted, and what Zara remembered was a gesture of understanding among his people. The war left scars on all of us. I lost 3 clutch brothers in the fighting before my people realized we had been deceived by the hegemony. The casual mention of family loss hit Zara like a physical blow. She had studied Krillian casualty reports, knew the numbers, but hearing it from someone who had lived through it made it real in a way statistics never could. I'm sorry, she said quietly, as am I for the losses your people suffered, but that is why I am here, teaching young humans about my species. Understanding prevents future wars, does it not? Professor Martinez entered the lab, calling for attention. Today we'll be examining Krillian neural adaptation patterns. Dr. Vecnor has graciously agreed to demonstrate the process. Zara watched as Sek moved to the front of the class, his movements graceful despite his alien anatomy. He began explaining how Krillian neural pathways could rewire themselves in response to environmental changes, a trait that had allowed them to survive on dozens of different worlds. This adaptability, Sek explained, is why my people were so valuable to the hegemony. We could fight on any world in any condition, but it also meant we could learn to live in peace when the right opportunity presented itself. A student raised her hand. Is it true that Commander Thorne personally negotiated the Krillian surrender? Zara's pen snapped in her hand. She looked down at the broken pieces, trying to control her expression while Sek answered. Not surrender, he corrected gently. Alliance. Commander Thorne understood that my people were not truly enemies of humanity. She offered us sanctuary and protection for our breeding worlds in exchange for our withdrawal from hegemony forces. That must have been an incredible meeting, another student said. What do you think she was like? Sek's dark eyes seemed to find Zara in the crowd, though she couldn't be sure if it was intentional. She was remarkable, direct, honest, willing to see past propaganda to find truth. She spoke to us as equals, not as conquered foes. After class, Zara lingered as other students filed out. She approached Sek, who was carefully packing away his demonstration materials. That was illuminating, she said. I hope so. It is important that young humans understand the complexities of the war. Too often, history simplifies things into good and evil, when the reality was far more nuanced. You speak about Commander Thorne with great respect. Sek paused in his packing, forearms momentarily still. She saved my species. Not just from the war, but from ourselves. We had become so focused on survival that we had forgotten how to live. She reminded us of our true nature. Did you ever meet her personally? Once, Sek said softly. During the final negotiations. She was younger than I expected and tired. So very tired. The weight of command had worn her down, but she never wavered in her dedication to peace. Zara felt her throat tighten. What happened to her after the war? I do not know. Some say she disappeared into obscurity, seeking the peace she had created for others. I hope that is true. She deserved rest after what she gave to the galaxy. That evening, Zara sat in her dorm room staring at a message on her personal communicator. The sender was listed as Admiral Richardson, her former superior and one of the few people who knew where she was. Zara, the message read, I hope your studies are going well. I wanted to inform you that there's been a development. Several former hegemony worlds are requesting human mediation for territorial disputes. The diplomatic corps wants to bring you in as a consultant. They need someone with your experience and reputation. Please consider it. The galaxy still needs Commander Thorne. She deleted the message without responding, as she had done with dozens of similar requests over the past 2 years. The galaxy might need Commander Thorne, but Zara needed to be just a student, just a person trying to understand the world she had helped create. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find her neighbor, a cheerful young woman named Lisa who was studying interstellar communications. Hey, want to grab dinner? I'm tired of eating alone. Zara almost declined, as she usually did, but something about the day's events made her crave human contact. Sure, give me a minute. The campus dining hall was busy with the usual evening crowd. Lisa chattered about her classes and her boyfriend while Zara picked at her food. only half listening. Her mind kept drifting back to Sek's words about tired commanders and the weight of leadership. "Earth to Zara," Lisa said, waving her hand. "You're in your own world again. You do that a lot, you know?" "Sorry, just thinking about class." "Which one?" "I heard you're taking some pretty advanced stuff for a first-year student." "It's nothing special." Zara deflected, but Lisa wasn't easily put off. "Come on, spill. What's your story? You're older than most students, you know more than you let on. And you have this way of carrying yourself like you're used to being in charge." The observation was too close to the truth. Zara had been working hard to blend in, but apparently her military bearing was harder to hide than she thought. "I had a career before coming back to school," she said carefully. "Sometimes it's hard to adjust to being a student again." "What kind of career?" "Government work. Logistics mostly." It wasn't entirely a lie. War was just logistics on a massive scale, and keeping a fleet supplied across interstellar distances required more paperwork than most people could imagine. Lisa seemed satisfied with the answer and moved on to other topics. But Zara noticed her neighbor studying her with curious eyes throughout the meal. She would have to be more careful about maintaining her cover. Later that night, Zara walked through the quiet campus toward the library. She had research to do for her diplomatic protocol class, but more than that, she needed to see how history was recording the events she had lived through. The library's holographic archives contained thousands of documents about the war: military analyses, political commentary, personal accounts from soldiers and civilians. She pulled up files on major battles, cross-referencing official reports with her own memories. The Battle of Kepler Station was described as a brilliant tactical victory that opened the hegemony's flank to human counterattack. The report didn't mention the 3,000 crew members who died when she ordered the station's reactor overloaded to deny it to enemy forces. Necessary casualties, the historians called them. She found video footage of herself at the Krillian negotiations, recorded by diplomatic cameras. The woman on screen looked confident and commanding, nothing like how she had felt inside. The stress and doubt were invisible to the cameras, hidden behind years of military training. In the video, she watched herself shake hands with the Krillian delegation leader, sealing the alliance that had changed the war's outcome. The alien's translator provided his words. "You have shown us that honor exists beyond species boundaries, Commander Thorne. We will not forget this kindness." Zara closed the file and leaned back in her chair. The library was nearly empty now, just a few dedicated students working on late assignments. Outside the windows, the campus was peaceful under the soft glow of artificial lighting. She had come here to escape the weight of her past, but everywhere she turned, she found reminders of who she had been. Professor Williams analyzed her strategies. Sek spoke of her with reverence, and the galaxy itself bore the imprint of her decisions. But perhaps that was the point. She couldn't escape her past because it had shaped the present. Her actions had created the peace that allowed students like Lisa to worry about boyfriends instead of survival. The universe where humans and Krillians could work together in university labs existed because of choices she had made in the darkness between stars. Zara gathered her research materials and headed back to her dorm. Tomorrow would bring more classes, more careful navigation between her past and present identities. But tonight, for the first time in months, she felt something approaching acceptance of her dual existence. Commander. Created. Perhaps that was its own kind of service. The emergency alert shattered the quiet Tuesday morning like breaking glass. Zara's communicator screamed with the distinctive pattern that meant one thing: incoming attack. Her body moved before her mind fully processed the sound, rolling from bed and reaching for weapons that weren't there. She stood in her dorm room in pajamas, heart hammering as the reality of her situation crashed back. No weapons, no ship, no command deck beneath her feet. Just a confused student in a university dormitory as campus security vehicles raced past her window. The alert cut off abruptly, replaced by the calm voice of the university's emergency system. "Attention all students and faculty. This is a drill. Please proceed to designated shelter areas according to your building's emergency protocol." "This is a drill." Zara's hands shook as she pulled on clothes. Around her, other students emerged from their rooms, grumbling about the early hour and joking about the drill. They treated it like a minor inconvenience. not understanding that those alert tones had once meant death was coming from the void. She followed the crowd toward the basement shelter, trying to calm her racing pulse. The underground area was designed to protect against orbital bombardment. Its thick walls and independent life support systems a reminder that peace was still fragile in this part of the galaxy. Pretty realistic drill, Lisa commented, appearing beside her in the crowd. They even had fake sensor readings on the emergency broadcasts. Zara frowned. What sensor readings? The alert mentioned unidentified ships in the outer system. Good detail work by whoever planned this. But Zara had caught something in the initial alert that the others had missed. The signature pattern, the specific frequency modulations. Those weren't standard drill protocols. Her military-trained ear recognized the subtle differences between simulated and real threat warnings. She pulled out her communicator and accessed the university's security feeds. Her old command codes were long expired, but she remembered backdoor access protocols that might still work. The feeds showed campus security at high alert, despite the official announcement of a drill. Vehicles were positioned for real defense, not drill simulation. Whatever was happening, it wasn't practice. Zara worked her way through the crowd to where she could see Director Hayes, the head of campus security. The man was trying to look calm for the students, but she recognized the tension in his posture. 20 years of reading people in crisis situations had taught her to spot real fear beneath professional facades. Director Hayes, she called out, approaching him directly. What's the real situation? Hayes looked at her with surprise and annoyance. Miss Thorne, please return to your designated area. This is just a drill. No, it isn't. She kept her voice low but firm. I heard the real alert pattern before it was changed. What's out there? Something in her tone made Hayes look at her more carefully. You seem very certain about something you couldn't possibly know. I have experience with emergency protocols. The initial signal was a genuine threat warning, not a drill simulation. Hayes studied her for a long moment, then gestured for her to follow him to a quieter corner of the shelter. 3 ships, he said quietly. Unknown configuration. Appeared at the edge of the system 20 minutes ago. They're not responding to communications. IFF signatures. Nothing we recognize. They're just sitting there scanning. Zara's mind automatically shifted into tactical analysis mode. Scanning patterns? Passive or active sensors? How do you know to ask these questions? Hayes demanded. Before she could answer, his communicator chirped with an update. The voice on the other end was tight with tension. Director, the ships are moving. Heading in system at high acceleration. Around them, students continued chatting and complaining about the interrupted morning, oblivious to the potential danger. Zara calculated intercept times and threat assessments while Hayes listened to more reports from his security team. 20 minutes to orbital position, the voice continued. Still no response to communications. Fleet Command says they're dispatching ships, but they won't arrive for 6 hours. 6 hours. If these were hostile ships, the university would be defenseless for 6 hours. Zara felt the familiar weight of command responsibility settling on her shoulders, even though she held no authority here. Director, she said urgently, you need to begin real evacuation procedures now. Get people away from potential target areas. And cause a panic based on what might be a false alarm? Better a false alarm than a real attack with no preparation. Hayes was torn between procedure and instinct. Zara could see him weighing the political consequences of evacuation against the potential loss of life. It was a calculation she had made many times during the war. His communicator crackled again. Director, the ships are changing course. They're heading directly for the planet now. ETA 45 minutes. The color drained from Hayes's face. Around them, students were still treating this as an inconvenience, some even trying to leave the shelter to get back to their rooms. Keep everyone here, Zara said. Lock down the shelter and prepare for possible bombardment. And get a message to Fleet Command with tactical data on those ships. I can't just... Who are you to give orders? The question hung in the air between them. Zara looked around at the hundreds of young people in the shelter, their lives potentially in danger. She thought of Lisa chatting about her boyfriend, of Sec trying to bridge the gap between species, of Professor Williams teaching history he had never lived. Someone who knows what she's talking about, she said finally. Please trust me. Hayes hesitated, then spoke into his communicator. All security teams maintain lockdown. Prepare for possible hostile action, and get me a direct line to Fleet Command. 15 minutes later, the first energy pulses lit up the campus above them. The shelter shook as defensive shields absorbed the impact. and emergency lighting flickered throughout the underground complex. Students screamed and pressed against the walls as the reality of their situation finally hit them. This was no drill. They were under attack by unknown forces, trapped underground while energy weapons carved through the buildings above. Zara found herself moving through the crowd, calming panicked students with quiet authority. She organized them into groups, checked on the injured when debris fell from the ceiling, and coordinated with Hayes on damage reports. The main academic complex is gone, Hayes reported, his voice hollow. Library, administration building, half the dormitories. They're being very precise about what they target. Casualties? Unknown. Most people made it to shelters, but some areas... He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. The bombardment continued for another hour before abruptly stopping. The silence was almost worse than the attacks, leaving everyone wondering if the ships had left or were simply preparing for the next phase. Zara's communicator chimed with an incoming message on a frequency she hadn't heard in 2 years. Fleet Command Emergency Channel, with authentication codes that proved this was no mistake. This is Admiral Richardson to any surviving personnel on Kepler University campus. We have positively identified the attacking vessels as hegemony remnant forces. Intelligence suggests they are specifically targeting the location of Commander Zara Thorne. Commander, if you are receiving this, please respond immediately. The shelter fell silent around her. Students and faculty stared as the message repeated, the words echoing off the concrete walls. Slowly, conversations died as people began to understand what they had heard. Commander Zara Thorne, Hayes repeated slowly. The Commander Thorne? From the war? Zara looked around at the faces staring at her. Students she had sat next to in lectures, professors who had taught her subjects she had once lived through, security personnel who had just witnessed her take charge in a crisis. She activated her communicator, using codes she hadn't touched in 2 years. Admiral Richardson, this is Commander Thorne. I copy your transmission. Thank God, Richardson's voice crackled back. Zara, we have 3 hegemony dreadnoughts in orbit. They've been hunting for you specifically. Our intelligence suggests they blame you personally for their defeat. Understood. What's the tactical situation? Fleet units are still 4 hours out. The attacking ships have made no demands, issued no communications. They appear to be systematically destroying the campus looking for you. Around her, the shelter buzzed with whispered conversations as people processed the revelation. Zara saw recognition dawning on faces. Students remembering lecture slides and memorial statues. Faculty connecting the quiet student with the legendary commander. If I surrender myself, Zara said into the communicator, will they stop the attack? Negative. Intelligence suggests their orders are to eliminate you and anyone who might have been exposed to your knowledge. These are fanatics, Zara. They won't stop until everything is destroyed. Zara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of command settling back onto her shoulders. She had tried to escape this burden, but it had followed her here and put innocent people in danger. Then we need to stop them, she said quietly. How? You have no ship, no weapons, no tactical resources. Zara looked around the shelter at the hundreds of people depending on her. Students who had come here to learn, faculty who had dedicated their lives to education, security personnel who had sworn to protect them all. Etter, she said, I have people who trust me. She turned to address the shelter, her voice carrying the authority that had once commanded fleets. My name is Zara Thorne. I was a commander in the war against the hegemony, and enemies from that conflict have followed me here. They have attacked this university because of me, and innocent people have died because of my presence. The shelter was absolutely silent now, every person hanging on her words. I cannot undo the danger I have brought here, she continued. But I can promise you this, we will survive. We will fight back, and we will show these remnants why humanity won the war. She looked directly at Hayes. Director, I need you to patch me through to all surviving personnel on campus. It's time to remind the galaxy who we are. The emergency communication system crackled to life throughout the surviving shelters across campus. Zara stood before the makeshift command center that Hayes had established, looking at a tactical display showing the devastating damage above them. 3/4 of the university lay in ruins, but 12 underground shelters remained intact with over 4,000 people still alive. This is Commander Thorne speaking to all surviving personnel, she began, her voice carrying across the network to every shelter. I know many of you are afraid. I know this seems hopeless. 3 enemy dreadnoughts orbit above us while our nearest military support is hours away. She paused, gathering her thoughts. These weren't trained soldiers under her command. They were students, professors, maintenance workers, cafeteria staff, ordinary people thrust into an extraordinary situation. But I need you to understand something about humanity, she continued. We don't surrender. We don't give up. And we certainly don't let bullies destroy the future we've built together. Through the communication system, she could hear murmurs of conversation from the other shelters. Fear, confusion, but also something else. A spark of defiance that she recognized from countless battles during the war. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do, Zara said. And then I'm going to ask you to do something that seems impossible. We're going to fight back. Hayes looked at her with disbelief. Commander, with respect, we have no weapons that can reach orbit. The campus defense grid was destroyed in the first attack. We have something better than weapons, Director. We have knowledge. She turned back to the communication system. Dr. Vecnor, are you receiving this transmission? Sek's musical voice came through clearly from the xenobiology lab shelter. I am here, Commander. Many of my colleagues from the science departments are with me. Good. I need you to tell me about hegemony dreadnought design, specifically their weakness to cascading electromagnetic pulses. There was a pause before Sek responded. You are thinking of the Battle of Rigel, where your forces used the system's magnetic field to disable hegemony ships. But Commander, we have no way to generate such a pulse from the planet's surface. Actually, we do. Zara pulled up a schematic of the university's physics department on the display. Dr. Chen, are you monitoring this channel? Yes, came the reply from another shelter. Though I should point out that I teach mathematics, not applied physics. But you have graduate students in the physics program, don't you? People who understand the particle accelerator in the research complex? The accelerator was damaged in the attack, Commander. Damaged, not destroyed. I've been studying the damage reports. The main ring is intact and we still have power from the geothermal generators. Zara traced pathways on the display with her finger. If we can create a resonance cascade in the accelerator ring and channel it through the communications array, we can generate an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to disrupt hegemony ship systems. Professor Williams' voice came through from the history department shelter. Commander, that sounds extremely dangerous, and theoretical at best. It is dangerous, Zara admitted, but it's also our only chance. The hegemony ships won't expect an attack from a university campus. They're designed to fight fleet actions, not defend against planetary installations. She paused, letting the implication sink in. I won't order anyone to help with this. You're not soldiers under my command. But if we do nothing, they'll eventually finish destroying the shelters and everyone inside them. The communication channels buzzed with discussion as people in different shelters talked among themselves. Zara waited, knowing that this decision had to come from them freely. She had learned during the war that volunteers fought harder than conscripts. Commander, Dr. Chen's voice came through with new determination. I have 6 graduate students here who think they can make your plan work. They'll need access to the physics building. The building is partially collapsed, Hayes warned. The tunnels leading there are blocked with debris. Then we clear them. Lisa's voice suddenly broke in from the student shelter. I'm studying engineering. I know which support structures are critical and which walls we can safely remove. More voices began volunteering. Maintenance staff who knew the underground tunnel system, computer science students who could reprogram the communications array, even cafeteria workers who could organize supply lines for the operation. Zara felt a familiar warmth spreading through her chest. This was humanity at its best. Ordinary people becoming extraordinary when faced with impossible odds. It was the same spirit that had won the war against overwhelming enemy forces. All right, she said. Here's what we're going to do. For the next 3 hours, Zara coordinated the most unusual military operation of her career. Students crawled through damaged tunnels to reach the physics building, carrying equipment salvaged from other destroyed facilities. Professors worked alongside janitors to clear debris and restore power connections. Sek proved invaluable, his forearms and alien strength allowing him to manipulate heavy equipment in tight spaces. More importantly, his detailed knowledge of hegemony technology helped them fine-tune their targeting frequencies. The ships above are old hegemony designs, he explained as they worked in the partially collapsed physics building. Their electromagnetic shielding has a resonance frequency that we can exploit, but the pulse will need to be precisely calibrated. Zara watched the work progress through security cameras and personal communicators. She had positioned herself in the communications center, coordinating between different teams and monitoring hegemony ship movements above. "Commander," Hayes reported, "the enemy ships are beginning another bombardment pattern. They're targeting the remaining shelters systematically. How long until they reach us?" 20 minutes, maybe less." Zara switched to the physics team channel. "Dr. Chen, what's your status?" "We're almost ready," came the reply. "But Commander, I have to warn you. If this doesn't work perfectly, the accelerator will overload and destroy what's left of the campus. And if it does work, the electromagnetic pulse should disable the hegemony ships for approximately 10 minutes. Long enough for them to fall into decaying orbits. That's all we need." Zara opened a channel to all shelters. "Everyone needs to get to the deepest levels immediately. In 5 minutes, we're going to generate an electromagnetic pulse that will shut down every electronic device within 50 kilometers." As people moved to the safest areas they could find, Zara made one final check of their improvised weapon. It was insane, using a university particle accelerator as a weapon, but insanity had served humanity well during the war. "Commander," Sek's voice came through on a private channel. "I want you to know that whatever happens, you have honored your people and mine today. You have shown these students what it means to fight for something greater than themselves. They did that themselves. Sek, I just gave them direction. That is what leadership means." Zara smiled despite their desperate situation. "Dr. Chen, are you ready?" "Ready, Commander. Beginning cascade initiation in 10 seconds. Through the security feed, Zara watched the hegemony ships positioning themselves for their final attack run. Weapons batteries glowed with gathering energy as they prepared to obliterate the remaining shelters. 5 seconds, Dr. Chen announced. Zara held her breath, thinking of all the people depending on this desperate gambit. Students who had come here to learn, not to fight. Faculty who had dedicated their lives to knowledge, not war. All of them united now in this moment of defiance. "Initiating cascade," Dr. Chen said. The world went white. Every screen, every light, every electronic device on campus died instantly as the electromagnetic pulse erupted from the particle accelerator. The pulse raced outward at the speed of light, carrying with it the concentrated determination of 4,000 people who refused to surrender. Above them, the 3 hegemony dreadnoughts shuddered as the pulse washed over their hulls. Shield generators failed, weapons systems crashed, life support switched to emergency backup. For a few critical seconds, the mighty warships were reduced to lifeless metal drifting in space. But a few seconds was all humanity needed. The ships began falling toward the planet as their engines struggled to restart. One by one, systems came back online, but it was too late. The dreadnoughts had lost too much altitude, their emergency thrusters insufficient to prevent atmospheric entry. In the communications shelter, Zara listened to reports from the surface teams as 3 brilliant streaks of fire crossed the morning sky. The hegemony remnant so determined to destroy her. "Etter," she said, "I have people who trust me." She turned to address the shelter, her voice carrying the authority that had once commanded fleets. "My name is Zara Thorn. I was a commander in the war against the hegemony, and enemies from that conflict have followed me here. They have attacked this university because of me, and innocent people have died because of my presence." The shelter was absolutely silent now, every person hanging on her words. "I cannot undo the danger I have brought here," she continued. "But I can promise you this, we will survive. We will fight back, and we will show these remnants why humanity won the war." She looked directly at Hayes. "Director, I need you to patch me through to all surviving personnel on campus. It's time to remind the galaxy who we are." The emergency communication system crackled to life throughout the surviving shelters across campus. Zara stood before the makeshift command center that Hayes had established, looking at a tactical display showing the devastating damage above them. 3/4 of the university lay in ruins, but 12 underground shelters remained intact with over 4,000 people still alive. "This is Commander Thorne speaking to all surviving personnel," she began, her voice carrying across the network to every shelter. "I know many of you are afraid. I know this seems hopeless. 3 enemy dreadnoughts orbit above us while our nearest military support is hours away." She paused, gathering her thoughts. These weren't trained soldiers under her command. They were students, professors, maintenance workers, cafeteria staff, ordinary people thrust into an extraordinary situation. But I need you to understand something about humanity, she continued. We don't surrender. We don't give up. And we certainly don't let bullies destroy the future we've built together. Through the communication system, she could hear murmurs of conversation from the other shelters. Fear, confusion, but also something else. A spark of defiance that she recognized from countless battles during the war. I'm going to tell you what we're going to do, Zara said. And then I'm going to ask you to do something that seems impossible. We're going to fight back. Hayes looked at her with disbelief. Commander, with respect, we have no weapons that can reach orbit. The campus defense grid was destroyed in the first attack. We have something better than weapons, Director. We have knowledge. She turned back to the communication system. Dr. Vecnor, are you receiving this transmission? Sek's musical voice came through clearly from the xenobiology lab shelter. I am here, Commander. Many of my colleagues from the science departments are with me. Good. I need you to tell me about hegemony dreadnought design, specifically their weakness to cascading electromagnetic pulses. There was a pause before Sek responded. You are thinking of the Battle of Rigel, where your forces used the system's magnetic field to disable hegemony ships. But Commander, we have no way to generate such a pulse from the planet's surface. Actually, we do. Zara pulled up a schematic of the university's physics department on the display. Dr. Chen, are you monitoring this channel? Yes, came the reply from another shelter. Though I should point out that I teach mathematics, not applied physics. But you have graduate students in the physics program, don't you? People who understand the particle accelerator in the research complex? The accelerator was damaged in the attack, Commander. Damaged, not destroyed. I've been studying the damage reports. The main ring is intact, and we still have power from the geothermal generators. Zara traced pathways on the display with her finger. If we can create a resonance cascade in the accelerator ring and channel it through the communications array, we can generate an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to disrupt hegemony ship systems. Professor Williams' voice came through from the history department shelter. Commander, that sounds extremely dangerous, and theoretical at best. It is dangerous, Zara admitted, but it's also our only chance. The hegemony ships won't expect an attack from a university campus. They're designed to fight fleet actions, not defend against planetary installations. She paused, letting the implication sink in. I won't order anyone to help with this. You're not soldiers under my command. But if we do nothing, they'll eventually finish destroying the shelters and everyone inside them. The communication channels buzzed with discussion as people in different shelters talked among themselves. Zara waited, knowing that this decision had to come from them freely. She had learned during the war that volunteers fought harder than conscripts. Commander, Dr. Chen's voice came through with new determination. I have 6 graduate students here who think they can make your plan work. They'll need access to the physics building. The building is partially collapsed, Hayes warned. The tunnels leading there are blocked with debris. Then we clear them. Lisa's voice suddenly broke in from the student shelter. I'm studying engineering. I know which support structures are critical and which walls we can safely remove. More voices began volunteering. Maintenance staff who knew the underground tunnel system, computer science students who could reprogram the communications array, even cafeteria workers who could organize supply lines for the operation. Zara felt a familiar warmth spreading through her chest. This was humanity at its best. Ordinary people becoming extraordinary when faced with impossible odds. It was the same spirit that had won the war against overwhelming enemy forces. All right, she said. Here's what we're going to do. For the next 3 hours, Zara coordinated the most unusual military operation of her career. Students crawled through damaged tunnels to reach the physics building, carrying equipment salvaged from other destroyed facilities. Professors worked alongside janitors to clear debris and restore power connections. Sek proved invaluable, his forearms and alien strength allowing him to manipulate heavy equipment in tight spaces. More importantly, his detailed knowledge of hegemony technology helped them fine-tune their targeting frequencies. The ships above are old hegemony designs, he explained as they worked in the partially collapsed physics building. Their electromagnetic shielding has a resonance frequency that we can exploit, but the pulse will need to be precisely calibrated. Zara watched the work progress through security cameras and personal communicators. She had positioned herself in the communications center, coordinating between different teams and monitoring hegemony ship movements above. Commander, Hayes reported, the enemy ships are beginning another bombardment pattern. They're targeting the remaining shelters systematically. How long until they reach us? 20 minutes, maybe less. Zara switched to the physics team channel. Dr. Chen, what's your status? We're almost ready, came the reply. But Commander, I have to warn you. If this doesn't work perfectly, the accelerator will overload and destroy what's left of the campus. And if it does work, the electromagnetic pulse should disable the hegemony ships for approximately 10 minutes. Long enough for them to fall into decaying orbits. That's all we need. Zara opened a channel to all shelters. Everyone needs to get to the deepest levels immediately. In 5 minutes, we're going to generate an electromagnetic pulse that will shut down every electronic device within 50 kilometers. As people moved to the safest areas they could find, Zara made one final check of their improvised weapon. It was insane, using a university particle accelerator as a weapon, but insanity had served humanity well during the war. Commander, Sek's voice came through on a private channel. I want you to know that whatever happens, you have honored your people and mine today. You have shown these students what it means to fight for something greater than themselves. They did that themselves. Sek, I just gave them direction. That is what leadership means, Zara smiled despite their desperate situation. Dr. Chen, are you ready? Ready, Commander. Beginning cascade initiation in 10 seconds. Through the security feed, Zara watched the hegemony ships positioning themselves for their final attack run. Weapons batteries glowed with gathering energy as they prepared to obliterate the remaining shelters. 5 seconds, Dr. Chen announced. Zara held her breath, thinking of all the people depending on this desperate gambit. Students who had come here to learn, not to fight. Faculty who had dedicated their lives to knowledge, not war. All of them united now in this moment of defiance. Initiating cascade, Dr. Chen said. The world went white. Every screen, every light, every electronic device on campus died instantly as the electromagnetic pulse erupted from the particle accelerator. The pulse raced outward at the speed of light, carrying with it the concentrated determination of 4,000 people who refused to surrender. Above them, the 3 hegemony dreadnoughts shuddered as the pulse washed over their hulls. Shield generators failed, weapons systems crashed, life support switched to emergency backup. For a few critical seconds, the mighty warships were reduced to lifeless metal drifting in space. But a few seconds was all humanity needed. The ships began falling toward the planet as their engines struggled to restart. One by one, systems came back online, but it was too late. The dreadnoughts had lost too much altitude, their emergency thrusters insufficient to prevent atmospheric entry. In the communications shelter, Zara listened to reports from the surface teams as 3 brilliant streaks of fire crossed the morning sky. The hegemony remnant so determined to destroy her. 3 days after the attack, the university campus looked like a war zone. Rescue crews picked through the rubble of destroyed buildings while temporary shelters housed displaced students and faculty. News crews from across human space had descended on the scene, all wanting to interview the legendary Commander Thorne who had turned a school into a fortress. Zara sat in the makeshift command center that had once been the campus security office, staring at a stack of messages from military officials, government representatives, and news organizations. Each one wanted something from her. Her expertise, her story, her return to active service. She deleted them all without reading past the subject lines. Commander? Director Hayes knocked on the open doorframe. There's someone here to see you. Zara looked up to see a woman in her 50s wearing the uniform of a Galactic Council mediator. The insignia marked her as a senior diplomat, the kind who only handled the most sensitive negotiations. Commander Thorne, the woman said, extending her hand. I'm Mediator Sarah Chen. We need to talk. If this is about returning to military service, Mediator, I'm not interested. It's not. May I sit? Zara gestured to a chair, noting the way Chen moved with careful precision. This was someone accustomed to high-stakes negotiations where a wrong word could start wars. Commander, what happened here 3 days ago has created a political crisis, Chen began. The hegemony remnants aren't just random raiders anymore. Our intelligence suggests they've been organizing, planning coordinated strikes against specific targets. Targets like me. Targets like the people who defeated them. You, Admiral Richardson, General Martinez, Ambassador Williams, the leadership that broke their empire. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. How many attacks have there been? 7 in the past month. You're the first target to survive. Chen's expression was grim. The others weren't as fortunate, or as resourceful. The weight of that revelation settled on Zara like a physical burden. Friends and colleagues from the war, people she had served alongside, were being systematically murdered while she sat in classrooms pretending to be a student. "What do you want from me, mediator?" "The council is forming a special task force to hunt down these remnant cells. We need someone who understands them, who knows how they think and fight. There are plenty of military analysts who can. There are no military analysts who defeated the hegemony at their peak strength." Chen interrupted. "There's only you." Zara stood and walked to the window, looking out at the temporary shelters where her fellow students were living. Lisa was out there somewhere, probably worried about her boyfriend who attended a university on another world. Professor Williams was helping coordinate the relief effort, still trying to teach even in the midst of disaster. "I came here to get away from all that," she said quietly. "I wanted to be normal, to learn things instead of destroying them." "And look what you accomplished with that knowledge," Chen replied. "You turned physics students into warriors and professors into tacticians. You saved 4,000 lives using nothing but what you learned in the classroom. I also got 7 buildings destroyed and put everyone I care about in danger." Chen stood and joined her at the window. "Commander, those people out there don't see you as someone who brought danger. They see you as the person who saved them when danger came." As if summoned by their conversation, a group of students walked past the window. Zara recognized several from her classes, including the young woman who had asked about Krillian reproductive cycles. They were carrying salvaged equipment toward the temporary physics lab that Dr. Chen had set up in a maintenance building. "They're still working on improvements to the pulse generator," Chen observed. "Your students want to turn their improvised weapon into a proper planetary defense system. They're not my students, aren't they? You taught them more about real leadership in 3 hours than most people learn in a lifetime." Zara watched as Sek emerged from one of the shelters, his 4 arms loaded with equipment. The Krillian was working alongside human students, their species' differences forgotten in the shared purpose of rebuilding. "The hegemony remnants aren't going to stop," Chen continued. "They'll keep attacking anyone associated with their defeat. Your friends from the war, the worlds you liberated, eventually even places like this. They'll keep killing until someone stops them. Someone, not necessarily me. You're the only one who's beaten them twice, Commander. Once during the war and once 3 days ago." Zara turned away from the window, but Chen's words followed her. The mediator was right, and they both knew it. Running away hadn't protected anyone. If anything, it had made the situation worse by removing her expertise from the people who needed it most. "If I agree to help," Zara said slowly, "I have conditions. Name them. First, this remains a civilian university. No military occupation, no permanent weapons installations. These people came here to learn, not to live in a fortress." "Agreed." "Second, I maintain my cover identity. To the public, I'm still just a student who happened to be here during the attack." Chen frowned. "That will be difficult. Too many people know the truth now. Then we give them a reason to keep it quiet. Make them part of the operation. You want to recruit university students as intelligence assets? I want to give them a purpose beyond being victims." Zara gestured toward the window. "Look at them. 3 days ago, they were worried about exams and social lives. Now they're designing weapon systems and organizing emergency operations. They've discovered what they're capable of. That's not how intelligence operations typically work, Commander. Nothing about this situation is typical. The hegemony remnants are using unconventional tactics, targeting civilians and non-military personnel. We need to respond with equally unconventional methods." Chen considered this for a long moment. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A network. Students, faculty, researchers at universities across human space. People who have access to information, who can spot patterns, who understand both technology and alien cultures. We turn the academic community into an intelligence-gathering operation. And you would coordinate this from here? From wherever the mission requires. But yes, this campus would be the center of operations." Zara smiled slightly. After all, what better cover for a secret operation than a university? Everyone expects students and professors to ask lots of questions. Chen was quiet for several minutes, clearly thinking through the implications. When she spoke again, her voice carried a note of respect. "You've been planning this since the attack, haven't you?" "I've been thinking about it. The hegemony always underestimated human adaptability. They couldn't understand how we turned every world into a fortress. every civilian into a potential soldier. They're making the same mistake now. All right, Commander. I'll take your proposal to the Council. But I need to know, are you ready to stop being just a student? Zara looked out the window again at the people rebuilding their lives from the ashes of destruction. Students who had become heroes, professors who had become tacticians, maintenance workers who had become the backbone of a military operation. I never stopped being a commander, she said quietly. I just forgot for a while what that really meant. That evening, Zara walked through the temporary shelters as the sun set behind the mountains. The campus was slowly coming back to life, with portable buildings housing essential functions and repair crews working around the clock to restore power and communications. She found Lisa in the student commons area, a converted maintenance building where people gathered for meals and news updates. Her neighbor looked up as she approached, her expression a mixture of awe and concern. So, Lisa said carefully, "You're really her, the Commander Thorne." "I'm really me," Zara replied, sitting down at the small table. "Same person you've been having dinner with for months. The same person who saved the galaxy. The same person who was too scared to tell her neighbor the truth." Lisa was quiet for a moment, processing this. Around them, other conversations continued, but Zara could feel the subtle attention focused on their table. Word had spread despite official secrecy, and everyone wanted to understand who she really was. "Why here?" Lisa asked finally. "Of all the places in human space you could have gone, why a university?" "Because I wanted to learn instead of fight. I wanted to understand the world I'd helped create instead of just protecting it. And now?" Zara looked around at the faces surrounding them. Young people who had discovered strength they never knew they possessed. Faculty who had proven that knowledge was its own kind of weapon. Staff who had shown that every person had value when crisis struck. "Now I know that learning and fighting aren't opposites," she said. "They're the same thing. We fight to protect our right to learn, and we learn so we can fight more effectively." Lisa smiled. "Does this mean you're staying? For real this time, not just hiding out?" "I'm staying," Zara confirmed. "But not as a student. As what I always was, someone who serves humanity's future." She stood to leave, then paused. "Lisa, thank you for being my friend before you knew who I was. That meant more than you'll ever know." As she walked back toward the command center, Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of purpose that didn't conflict with her desire for peace. She could serve the galaxy's future without abandoning the life she had built here. Commander Thorne was coming out of hiding, but this time on her own terms. 6 months after the attack, Kepler University had become something unprecedented in galactic history. A campus that was simultaneously an educational institution and the most effective intelligence network in known space. Students attended lectures on alien cultures while secretly gathering information on hegemony remnant activities. Professors published academic papers that contained coded operational updates for agents across human space. Zara stood in what had once been the destroyed library, now rebuilt as the Galactic Studies Research Center. Floor-to-ceiling displays showed information flowing in from dozens of worlds, a constant stream of data that painted a picture of enemy movements and intentions. "Commander," Dr. Chen called from his workstation. "We're getting reports from the Vega system. 3 universities there have detected the same communication patterns we flagged last month. Hegemony code frequencies, modified versions. They're adapting their encryption but not fast enough." Chen pulled up a tactical display showing signal intercepts across multiple star systems. The students at Vega Tech have been monitoring subspace traffic as part of their telecommunications course. They don't even realize they're conducting intelligence gathering. Zara smiled at the elegant simplicity of their operation. Across human space, thousands of students were learning about galactic communications, alien languages, and interstellar politics. Their homework assignments just happened to involve analyzing real intelligence data. "Any sign of targeting patterns?" she asked. "Yes, and that's what worries me." Sek approached from another workstation, his forearms manipulating multiple data streams simultaneously. "The remnants appear to be focusing on educational institutions now, not military targets." The implication was clear and chilling. The hegemony survivors had learned from their failed attacks on military leaders. Now they were targeting the places where future leaders were being trained. "They're trying to cut off humanity's intellectual development," Zara realized. "Destroy our ability to adapt and learn." It's a logical strategy, Sek agreed. During the war, your species' greatest advantage was education. You learned faster than we could develop countermeasures. Professor Williams entered the center carrying a stack of papers, his expression grim. Commander, I've been analyzing historical patterns from the original war. The hegemony used similar tactics against other species before attacking humanity. What kind of tactics? They would identify the most intellectually gifted individuals in a species and eliminate them systematically. Scientists, philosophers, teachers, anyone who might develop effective resistance strategies. Zara felt her blood run cold. How many species did they defeat this way? 17. Williams set down his papers, revealing charts and graphs documenting the fall of civilizations. Each one followed the same pattern. First, they eliminated the intellectual leadership. Then they conquered the leaderless populations. But humanity survived their initial attempts, Dr. Chen pointed out. Because we had distributed leadership, Zara replied, understanding the pattern. Our educational system was decentralized. Every world, every institution developed its own experts and leaders. Exactly. And now they're trying to correct that oversight. Williams pulled up a galactic map showing hegemony remnant activities. Look at the targeting pattern. They're not hitting random schools. They're specifically attacking institutions known for producing military leaders, scientists, and diplomats. Zara studied the data, her mind automatically shifting into strategic analysis mode. The enemy was thinking like she would think, planning several moves ahead instead of just reacting to immediate threats. They're not trying to win a military victory, she said slowly. They're trying to prevent humanity from producing another generation of leaders who could threaten them. A generational war, Sek observed. Very sophisticated thinking for remnant forces. Too sophisticated. Zara turned to the main tactical display, pulling up intelligence reports from the past 6 months. Director Hayes, what's the status on our infiltration efforts? Hayes approached from the security station, his expression troubled. That's what concerns me, Commander. We've identified 13 separate remnant cells, but they're operating with a level of coordination that suggests central command. Someone's organizing them, Williams concluded. This isn't random terrorism. It's a coordinated campaign. Zara stared at the data flowing across the displays, pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. The precision of the attacks, the strategic thinking, the focus on long-term objectives rather than immediate revenge. Lisa, she called to her former neighbor, who now served as the operations chief communications coordinator. I need you to pull up all intercepted transmissions from the past month. Look for command frequencies, not operational chatter. Lisa's fingers flew across her keyboard, sorting through thousands of intercepted messages. There, she said, highlighting a series of transmission bursts. These signals appear every 3 days, always from different locations but with identical encryption signatures. Source locations? Mobile. The transmissions originate from ships moving through empty space between star systems. Zara felt the familiar chill of recognition. She had seen this pattern before during the war. They're not just remnants, she said quietly. Someone's rebuilt a command structure. But who? Hayes asked. Our intelligence says all the major hegemony leaders were killed or captured. All the ones we knew about. Zara pulled up files from the original war, data she had studied but never fully analyzed. Dr. Chen, I need computational analysis on hegemony command patterns during the final phase of the war. What am I looking for? Anomalies. Decisions that didn't fit the established leadership profiles we had developed. As Chen worked, Zara paced the center floor, her mind racing through possibilities. The hegemony had been hierarchical, rigid in their command structure. But someone had been adapting their tactics near the war's end, showing flexibility that hadn't existed before. Got something, Chen announced. During the last 18 months of the war, approximately 30% of hegemony tactical decisions showed significant deviation from their established patterns. Different leadership, or someone learning to think like humans. The implication hit Zara like a physical blow. During the war, the hegemony had captured human prisoners, military personnel who might have been forced to reveal tactical thinking and strategic planning methods. They had human advisors, she realized. Prisoners who were forced to teach them how we think and fight. But the war ended, Williams protested. All human prisoners were repatriated. All the ones we knew about. Zara turned to Sek, knowing that his people had been closer to hegemony operations than anyone else. Sek, during your time with them, did you ever hear about humans who collaborated? The Krillian's head tilted in the gesture that indicated deep thought. There were rumors, he said slowly. Stories of humans who had been broken by captivity, who helped design new tactics against their own species. That would explain the strategic sophistication, Hayes observed. Someone who understands both human and hegemony thinking. Zara stared at the tactical displays, seeing the enemy's plan with crystal clarity now. This wasn't about revenge or territorial conquest. It was about preventing humanity from achieving its full potential by eliminating the institutions that created leaders. They're playing a very long game, she said. Decades, maybe centuries. They know they can't defeat us militarily, so they're trying to stunt our development. What do we do? Lisa asked. Zara looked around at the people who had become her team, her friends, her fellow defenders of humanity's future. Students who had learned to think like intelligence analysts, professors who had become strategic planners, staff who had proven that everyone had a role to play in protecting civilization. We show them why that strategy won't work, she said. We prove that humanity's greatest strength isn't our institutions or our leaders. It's our ability to turn anyone into a leader when the situation demands it. She walked to the center of the room, her voice carrying the authority that had once commanded fleets. Dr. Chen, I want you to design a new curriculum. Advanced strategic thinking, distributed leadership principles, adaptive tactics. Every student on this campus is going to learn how to think like a commander. Commander, William said carefully. That sounds like you're preparing for war. I'm preparing for survival, Zara corrected. The hegemony wants to eliminate our future leaders before they can develop. So we're going to make sure that every human has the potential to be a leader. She turned to the galactic map, showing the locations of universities and research institutions across human space. We're going to turn education itself into our weapon. By the time we're finished, every student in human space will be capable of independent strategic thinking. And then? Sek asked. Zara smiled, feeling the familiar fire of purpose burning in her chest. Then we're going to hunt down whoever's coordinating these attacks and remind them why they lost the war in the first place. The center buzzed with renewed energy as her team began implementing the expanded operation. Humanity was about to receive an education I